Most relationships end with a clear expectation. Two people break up, go their separate ways, and eventually become strangers. That's the version most of us understand. It's clean, it's simple, it makes sense. But every so often, you come across something that doesn't fit that pattern. Two people who once loved each other still text. They still meet for coffee. They still share jokes, memories, and sometimes even life updates. To outsiders, it can seem confusing. Some people call it mature. Others call it a disaster waiting to happen. And that raises an interesting question. What kind of person stays friends with their ex? The answer is far more complicated than most people realize, because beneath every friendship with an ex lies a psychological story, and not all of those stories are the same. At first glance, staying friends with an ex seems either incredibly healthy or incredibly unhealthy. Most people fall into one of those camps immediately. But human behavior rarely works in such simple categories. The same action can come from completely different motivations. Two people can both remain friends with an ex while living out entirely different psychological realities. One friendship might reflect emotional maturity. Another might reveal an inability to let go. The challenge is that from the outside, they often look exactly the same. Imagine receiving a message from someone who once knew everything about you. Someone who remembers your fears, your habits, your insecurities, and the version of you that existed years ago. Most people would feel something. Maybe comfort, maybe nostalgia, maybe confusion. That's because relationships don't simply disappear when they end. The emotional connections often outlive the relationship itself, and for some people, that lingering connection becomes the foundation of a friendship. The real question is whether that friendship is built on acceptance or unfinished business. 1. Why breakups aren't actually clean. One of the biggest misconceptions about relationships is the belief that feelings operate like switches. People assume that once a breakup happens, emotions should disappear in an orderly fashion. Real life rarely works that way. Human attachment is far more complicated. When two people spend months or years building routines together, their brains begin associating that person with safety, familiarity, and emotional stability. Even when a relationship ends for good reasons, those psychological connections don't vanish overnight. This creates a strange situation where someone may no longer want a romantic relationship, but still miss the presence of the person. For some individuals, friendship becomes a way of preserving part of that connection without returning to the relationship itself. 2. The people who genuinely move on contrary to popular belief. Some people truly can remain friends with an ex in a healthy way. These individuals tend to view relationships differently from most people. Instead of seeing every breakup as a failure, they see relationships as experiences that served a purpose during a specific chapter of life. When that chapter ends, resentment doesn't automatically take its place. They accept that two people can be incompatible romantically while still appreciating each other's qualities as human beings. What's interesting is that these people are usually not obsessed with maintaining the friendship. If contact naturally fades, they accept that too. Their ability to stay friends comes from emotional flexibility rather than emotional dependence. 3. The people who can't let go then there is another category entirely. On the surface, they also stay friends with their ex. But psychologically, something very different is happening. They haven't accepted the ending. Friendship becomes a way of remaining emotionally connected while avoiding the pain of complete separation. They monitor social media. They pay attention to new relationships. They respond to messages instantly. Every interaction carries hidden hope that things might eventually return to the way they were. The friendship isn't really a friendship. It's a relationship existing in disguise. And because the underlying expectations remain unresolved, these situations often create more emotional suffering than either person realizes. 4. The fear of being replaced. One of the strongest psychological forces behind some ex-friendships is a fear most people never openly discuss. The fear of becoming irrelevant. During a relationship, you occupy a unique position in someone's life. You become part of their daily routine, their future plans, and their emotional world. A breakup threatens that position. Suddenly, someone else could take your place. For certain individuals, maintaining friendship serves as protection against that fear. Even if the romantic relationship is gone, the connection remains. They still matter. They still have access. They still occupy space in the other person's life. The friendship becomes less about affection and more about preserving significance. 5. The nostalgia trap. Human memory has a fascinating habit. It edits. Over time, painful moments fade while positive memories become easier to access. This is one reason people often miss former relationships more intensely months after they end than immediately afterward. They stop remembering the arguments and start remembering the inside jokes. They forget the incompatibilities and remember the comfort. Friendship with an ex can sometimes amplify this process. Each interaction becomes a reminder of the good times while creating opportunities to rewrite history in a more favorable light. The danger is that nostalgia doesn't tell the whole truth. It presents a polished version of reality, leaving people emotionally attached to a relationship that never truly existed in the way they now remember it. 6. The most secure people handle it differently. Psychologists often notice an interesting pattern. People with secure attachment styles usually approach ex-friendships very differently. They don't feel compelled to force closeness, but they also don't feel compelled to destroy every connection. If a friendship develops naturally, they're comfortable with it. If distance develops naturally, they're comfortable with that too. Their sense of identity doesn't depend on maintaining access to the other person. Because of this, they rarely experience the emotional turbulence that characterizes unhealthy ex-friendships. Ironically, the people most capable of maintaining a healthy friendship with an ex are often the people least concerned about keeping one. 7. Why new relationships change everything. One of the fastest ways to reveal the true nature of an ex-friendship is when one person enters a new relationship. Suddenly, hidden emotions become visible. A friendship that seemed perfectly healthy may become filled with tension, jealousy, or discomfort. This happens because new relationships expose motivations that were previously concealed. If the friendship was built on genuine acceptance, both people adapt and move forward. If it was built on lingering attachment, the cracks begin to show. What looked like friendship was often emotional waiting. And nothing exposes waiting quite like the arrival of someone new. 8. The paradox nobody expects. The strangest part of all this is that the healthiest friendships with exes often emerge after both people have fully accepted losing each other. Not while they're processing the breakup, not while they're secretly hoping for reconciliation, not while they're trying to soften the pain. True friendship usually appears much later, after enough time has passed for the romantic relationship to genuinely become part of the past. In other words, the people most capable of staying friends are often the people most willing to walk away completely. That sounds contradictory, but psychologically it makes perfect sense. Genuine friendship requires freedom. Hidden attachment does not. 9. What it really reveals. When people hear that someone is friends with their ex, they often rush to judgment. They assume maturity or dysfunction, wisdom or weakness. But the reality is far more nuanced. Staying friends with an ex doesn't automatically reveal who a person is. What matters is why they're doing it. Some are preserving a meaningful connection without needing anything more. Others are protecting themselves from loneliness, uncertainty, or loss. The behavior may look identical, but the psychology underneath can be radically different. That's why understanding motivation matters more than judging the action itself. Perhaps that's what makes friendships with exes so fascinating. They're rarely about the friendship alone. They often reveal deeper truths about attachment, identity, memory, and the way humans cope with change. Some people remain friends because they've genuinely made peace with the past. Others remain friends because part of them is still living in it. And from the outside, it can be almost impossible to tell the difference. Maybe the real question was never whether staying friends with an ex is good or bad. Maybe the more important question is this: if the friendship disappeared tomorrow, would you be at peace with that? The answer often reveals far more than the friendship itself.